Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally flip how we look at the world right outside our windows. Just imagine for a second if geography wasn't just about staring at maps and memorizing where mountains and rivers are. What if instead you understood that every single field, every village, and every road is a living, breathing piece of a much larger puzzle? Now today, that idea is pretty normal, but a century ago, man, it was completely revolutionary.
So I really want you to think about this question for a moment. Does nature control human destiny? When you look at the grand civilizations of the past, or even our sprawling modern cities today, are they simply the inevitable result of their climate and terrain? Does the environment literally dictate how a culture evolves? Well, for a really long time, the absolute smartest minds in the world believed the answer was an undisputed, resounding yes.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this epic clash of ideas is where our story really kicks off. On one side, we have the old world view, this rigid concept where nature rules humanity with an iron fist. And on the other side, we have a radical, totally game-changing idea, the cultural landscape. This was the brilliant, disruptive theory proposed by one guy who basically dared to suggest that humans aren't just passive subjects of the earth. Actually, we're the active creators of the landscapes all around us.
Part 1. The Old World of Geography.
To truly appreciate why this was such a huge revolution, we kind of have to travel back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The absolute dominant theory of that era was called environmental determinism. Championed by the old guard of scholars, this incredibly rigid perspective argued that your climate determines your culture and nature completely controls human development. In this view, human societies were just passive products of their environment with pretty much zero real influence over the earth. Nature acts, humans react. That was the whole story.
Part 2. The Cultural Landscape Revolution.
But then, the paradigm entirely shifted, and it was all thanks to a man named Carl Ortwin Sauer. Born in Missouri back in 1889, his very first classroom was just the local countryside, where he watched everyday farmers actively transforming the environment. He took that raw curiosity all the way to the University of Chicago, grabbing his PhD in 1915. And while he was working within those traditional frameworks early in his career, he started realizing something big. The environment alone absolutely could not explain the human settlements he was seeing. By the time he moved to UC Berkeley in 1923, the stage was perfectly set for him to shatter the old paradigm entirely.
In 1925, Sauer dropped a bombshell. He published The Morphology of Landscape. And honestly, it is so hard to overstate just how monumental this was. This single publication became one of the most influential geographical papers ever written, period. Its impact on geography is easily up there with the landmark works of Darwin in biology or Einstein in physics. It literally shifted the axis of how scholars viewed the Earth and humanity's place upon it.
Now, what's really interesting about this is his core argument. It was this beautifully intuitive yet profound equation. Step 1, you have the natural area, that's the blank canvas. Step 2, you introduce culture, the active agent. And step 3, when that cultural agent gets to work acting upon the natural medium, the final result is the cultural landscape. Just like that, he completely flipped environmental determinism right on its head.
Under Sauer's brilliant new framework, nature merely provides the foundation. It's just the starting block. Humans then step in and intentionally modify that foundation to reflect their culture. Think about it for a second. A wild forest doesn't just naturally arrange itself into perfectly orderly rows of corn, right? It becomes farmland because of human culture. A random mountain isn't inherently a place of worship until human culture decides to make it a sacred site. A wilderness becomes a bustling, noisy city. The landscape we look at every day isn't purely natural at all. It is a direct, tangible product of human interaction.
Part 3. Into the field.
But Sauer wasn't just a big ideas guy. He knew for sure he couldn't prove his theory sitting up in some ivory tower. While a lot of the traditional scholars were totally fine relying strictly on library books, Sauer demanded direct field observation. He insisted you had to actually get your boots dirty and go out to the landscape. And he didn't just go as a standard geographer either. He combined geography with anthropology, history, and ecology, talking face-to-face with people about their long-held traditions.
This relentless drive led to his absolutely legendary fieldwork down in Latin America. Traveling extensively all across Mexico, Sauer studied indigenous societies up close. He mapped out their incredibly intricate agricultural systems. We're talking ancient terracing and really complex crop rotations. He observed firsthand how these cultures brilliantly adapted to rugged terrains. By physically walking the land, his direct observations produced some of the most detailed, mind-blowing cultural studies of the 20th century.
So that crucial point is what he actually discovered out there in the dirt, particularly when it came to agriculture. Sauer deeply investigated the origins of farming and plant domestication, and he theorized that agriculture didn't just pop up as some sudden, lucky eureka moment. Instead, it originated through long, deliberate cultural experimentation. These ancient societies were intentionally and masterfully transforming their ecosystems over generations. They were literally the original architects of the landscapes we still walk on today.
Part 4. Warning the modern world.
Now, Sauer wasn't just a historian looking in the rearview mirror. He clearly recognized the really dangerous trajectory of our modern age. Way before mainstream environmentalism was really a thing, he was out there sounding the alarm. Drawing straight from his fieldwork, he aggressively called out rapid deforestation, soil degradation, and reckless resource exploitation. He saw exactly what goes down when that cultural agent we talked about becomes greedy and short-sighted.
He understood a pretty heavy truth that hits incredibly close to home today. Humans possess immense power to reshape nature, and because of that, we carry an immense responsibility for it. Because he caught on to this so early, modern environmental historians view Sauer not just as a geographer, but as a vital, trailblazing pioneer for today's climate challenges. His work is a stark reminder that absolutely every action we take on the land leaves a lasting, readable scar.
Part 5. A lasting global legacy.
So how exactly does one guy's fieldwork end up changing the whole world? Well, he cemented his ideas into a massive intellectual movement at UC Berkeley, famously known as the Berkeley School. Students flocked from across the globe just to study under his guidance, and together they rigorously developed entirely new fields like historical geography and human ecology. Over time, his students scattered, carrying his interdisciplinary methods to universities all over the planet. Now, to be totally fair, no one escapes criticism entirely, right? As his influence grew, some peers definitely pushed back. Critics argued his work was way too descriptive and lacked the hard quantitative data or mathematical models they preferred. Others felt he sometimes leaned too heavily on culture, maybe at the expense of economic factors. But the thing is, Sauer actually welcomed the scrutiny. He valued rigorous, independent thinking above pretty much anything else. And honestly, enduring debate is the true mark of a great thinker. His ideas were so substantial, they practically demanded to be argued over. Carl Ortwin Sauer officially retired in 1957, but he never really stopped. He kept up his passionate research and writing for years. He eventually passed away in 1975 at the age of 86, but here is the fascinating part. His ideas didn't even come close to disappearing with him. In fact, his intellectual presence only grew stronger and more relevant in the decades following his death. And this brilliantly illustrates his enduring relevance. Today, modern geographers are using incredibly advanced tools that Sauer could have only dreamed of. We're talking GIS mapping, high-tech satellite imagery, remote sensing, and even artificial intelligence. Yet despite all this phenomenal futuristic technology, they are ultimately still striving to answer Sauer's exact same core question: how do humans transform the Earth? The technology completely changed, but his fundamental framework? It remains the absolute bedrock of the entire discipline.
Which brings us to our final takeaway. Carl Sauer taught us that, sure, nature shapes humans, but humans also shape nature right back. Every single village, every paved road, every ancient temple, they all leave a mark. So here's my challenge to you. The very next time you look out your window, don't just see a random assortment of trees and buildings. Look a little closer. Try to actually read the story written jointly by the Earth and humanity, right there in your own local landscape. Thanks so much for exploring the fascinating mind of Carl O. Sauer with me today. Keep asking those big questions, keep looking at the details, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.